When I first started coming here, we had different service books. They were purple, and the chant was written in English underneath. And I'd try to be doing the chant and quickly read the English translation. And I always wished we would do it in English so I'd know what it was doing. But then one time we tried it, and we did it in English, and it just doesn't work. Because you're chanting from here and not your heart. So anyway, good morning. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Last Sunday, several of us represented the Twin Cities Buddhist Sangha at the Como Park Annual Obon Festival. And we've had a presence there for several years now. And it's always very gratifying to receive so many visitors at our booth. Visitors who seem genuinely interested in learning about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And it's really fun and a little bit difficult to explain Shin Buddhism to each person, to try to explain in just a few words and within a few minutes. And in my experience, many people here in the West, when they think of Buddhism, they think of meditation on a cushion, and they think of Zen Buddhism. And yes, we are connected because each school or sect of Buddhism shares with one another the basic roots. I like that we have shared services each year, even with the Minnesota Zen Center and also with the Clouds and Water Zen Center. I love that we get together and we learn about each other and our connection and discover our similarities and our uniquenesses. But how do we explain Jodo Shinshu Buddhism? It's almost easier to understand the other Buddhist traditions, such as Zen Buddhism, because there are things that you do, practices you should undertake. And so how do we connect all that is going on today to something, Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, that began 9 centuries ago with the founder of Shin Buddhism, Shinran Shonin, or Buddhism, which came about in the 5th or 6th century BCE. Is it even relevant now? Is the history behind Jodo Shinshu of any interest anymore? Is there any connection for us? The answer, according to me, is yes. It's very relevant to today. And yes, the life of Shinran Shonin is one that we can relate to, even though he lived in the late 1100s through the 1200s in Japan, our founder. But our lives today are not so very different. History is not something that has been left behind in the past. Or as Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So to begin to talk about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism means that we discuss the life of the founder, Shinran Shonin, who was born in Japan during the time when the Heian period was giving way to the Kamakura period. This was during a time when there was much upheaval, socially, culturally, and especially politically. Similar to our own trying times, he lived during a time of many great difficulties, of instability and confusion. Even as a child, Shinran Shonin was not spared difficulty and suffering. Before he was 8 years old, he had lived through 2 earthquakes, a massive fire that destroyed part of the nearby city of Kyoto, and he encountered dead bodies in the street due to the famine. Society was changing radically, resulting in warring and political unrest. Shinran lost his mother at the age of 8, and it's believed that he lost his father early too. And then at age 9, he was placed in a Buddhist monastery on Mount Hiei. By that young age, he had clearly had an in-depth education regarding the reality of an ever-changing world. There is a poem attributed to Shinran. Apparently, it was written the night before his initiation into the monastery. And this poem expresses what he was going through as he was about to enter the monastery when everything was about to change yet again for him. This is the poem. Cherry blossoms that are felt to last until the morrow may well blow away during the night. And doesn't life nowadays feel like that? That just when we maybe think we can have a moment of peace, that everything shifts? And I think we can relate to his life and challenges, especially now when we are being swept up in what seems like cataclysmic changes politically, socially, and culturally. And we can't even catch our breath before there's another shift and another upheaval. We might think that life might have been so much easier in a different time and place, in an earlier time and place, or even better if we were sheltered in a monastery. We might assume that once inside a monastery, life would be peaceful for Shinran, but it wasn't. The monks engaged in posturing and exhibited petty, jealous behavior. Shinran was required to undertake austere practices, which he did diligently. But he found that the more he practiced, the more he did and tried to do, the less connected he felt. The practices seemed meaningless to him, and he considered himself a failure. But still, he persisted for 2 decades. Eventually, he was drawn to embrace the Nembutsu, the recitation of the Namu Amida Butsu, over and over and over again. He was taught to do this by sitting long periods in a meditative state, by calming his mind and focusing on the Nembutsu, but he was unsuccessful yet again. So Shinran began to ponder if this was so difficult for him as a monk who has committed every hour of his life to Buddhist practices, if it was so difficult for him to change and to be able to step away from his ego-centered ways, if all of his practices brought him no closer to enlightenment, then what are the chances for a layperson who must also concentrate on raising children, on working, on caring for a house and home? What are the chances for those who are bound by all the requirements of human existence? He eventually met Honen Shonin, and it was through him that Shinran learned about the larger sutra, which the historical Buddha had called the most important teaching, or the true teaching. The larger sutra tells of the Bodhisattva Dharmakara who vowed that he would not accept Buddhahood unless all beings would be assured that they will attain enlightenment and enter the Pure Land. He vowed, and this is what is known as the primal vow, he said, if when I attain Buddhahood, the sentient beings of the 10 quarters with sincere mind, entrusting themselves, aspiring to be born to my land, and saying my name perhaps 10 times should not be born there, may I not attain supreme enlightenment. Thus, he vowed that all sentient beings would go to the Pure Land and obtain Buddhahood. As Shinran pondered the words of the primal vow, he understood that it clearly shows how the Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who became the Amida Buddha, enthusiastically embraced all sentient beings who have no way of attaining enlightenment through their own efforts. And so it was Honen Shonin who helped Shinran Shonin come to the understanding that it was through the recitation of the Namu Amida Butsu that one will become liberated from the suffering of birth and death. Namu Amida Butsu, I take refuge in the Amida Buddha. And it is in these words that we say we embrace the Amida Buddha, the heart of wisdom and compassion, and we are grateful. So once Shinran learned and understood all these things, life did not magically change for him personally or in Japan. Political upheaval, infighting, and constant change persisted. He was persecuted, censored, and exiled. He became estranged from his own son. Life was difficult in childhood. It was a struggle at the monastery, and it continued to be hard throughout life, his life, just as life is not always easy for each and all of us. And yet, life did change for Shinran completely. Just as our lives change when we accept and embrace the generosity and the compassionate gift of the Amida Buddha as expressed through the primal vow. His life changed because Shinran Shonin came to what we now call Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, which means the true teaching of the Pure Land. He came to it when, after years of striving, he finally learned he can let go and simply rest in the promise held in the primal vow. And in letting go, he was held. This may be hard for many of us to relate to, those of us who are raised in Western culture especially, because we are a nation having sayings such as sink or swim, stand on your own 2 feet, roll up your sleeves and get to work, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. We're a society of always doing, always believing in striving. We believe in achievements. We believe in doing it all by ourselves. And that's pretty much how we measure our value. Our culture is about undertaking practices or fulfilling requirements. It's focused on whatever it is that we as an individual can do in order to achieve something. In our society, we are rewarded for action. We expect to be rewarded for action, and we use action words. We take action against that which we really cannot control, even though we think we can. Think of some of the things we say, the action words, such as battling cancer, or moving mountains, or taming the wild, or standing against the tide. But when we come to embrace the Buddhist root understanding that all things are impermanent, all things are transient in nature, and that there is no way around it. Life is connected with suffering, and the reason we suffer is because we cling to the idea that we can have things our way. And then that we are angry or hurt because that doesn't happen. But by letting go of our ego, of our need to hold on, to cling, to control, to be angry or unhappy because we want things to have been different, brings a cessation of our suffering. And this allows us to live in the present moment and ultimately to live in peace and contentment, no matter the situation. And so what specifically is Jodo Shinshu Buddhism? A Buddhism which in a way is so simple and also deep and profound. Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is about opening oneself to receiving, and in doing so, to end up traveling a path of humility, of gratitude, and ultimately of compassion. At the Como Park Obun Festival, we gave this little brochure to those who were interested in learning more. And I love how it begins by saying that while other schools of Buddhism seek to attain or realize enlightenment, the Shin Buddhist path is one of simply listening and opening one's heart to receiving it. It goes on to say that when we try to chase or achieve enlightenment, it's like trying to grab hold of a snowflake. It's not possible. But when we simply open ourselves to the Dharma, it's like opening our hand and letting the snowflake land. We gently receive it without grabbing and clinging. For Shin Buddhists, birth in the Pure Land is what we all long for because it means we are awakened just as the Buddha was. It means we are liberated. It means we are no longer suffering. We are no longer ego-driven. We no longer view everything in relation to ourself. And we are released from our earthly way of being, all because of the primal vow. And this knowing, deep in our very being, is what brings us to humility and to gratitude and to compassion. We truly understand that nothing is forever, and we let go of holding on to that idea. When we let go, we entrust ourselves to the compassionate vow of the Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who became the Amida Buddha, as conveyed in the larger sutra. So Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is the way of easy practice. All we do is say the Nembutsu, which is so simple and easy, and yet is truly profound. For to say the Nembutsu is to speak with gratitude for the compassion and generosity of the Amida Buddha, a gratitude that arises from within without conjuring it up for ourselves. It's to recognize our very self-centered nature and say, I entrust myself, I give myself over to the awakened being of immeasurable wisdom and compassion who has come to liberate me from my nature. To entrust oneself in this way is called shinjin, and it is the opening of the hand to receive the snowflake. Shinjin does not have a good translation in English. Some people use the word faith, and that kind of comes close. But what it is a trusting in the truth of the primal vow. And because of that faith or that trust, we let go of all practice. We let go of all trying. We let go. And in the letting go, we are allowing the Amida Buddha to hold us. Or maybe not even allowing, but recognizing that we are already being held. And in that recognition, we have peace of mind no matter what. So this easy way is also the hardest part about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, because entrusting or shinjin is not something that one can do. In our culture, it's almost easier to engage in difficult practices than to not. And so with this mindset, the idea of relying on what is called other power, rather than relying on our own power, is hard to grasp. It's allowing, graciously and gratefully opening our hands and our hearts to receiving the gift we are given through the vow of the Amida Buddha. That is what will cause our birth in the Pure Land. This is the gift that liberates us to entrust. It's all kind of intertwined. Shinran said, by the benefit of the unhindered light, the virtuous great Shinjin is obtained. Assuredly does our evil passion turn into enlightenment as ice melts into water. So there's a story that I love, and it's one I have stood behind this podium and told you before, so I apologize for the repeat. But I tried to find another story that would clarify the same idea, and I found this is the one. So, because it's a story of the opening of our hand and receiving the snowflake. So I hope you'll be willing, for those of you who have heard it, to listen to it again by holding in your heart the words we often hear about how to listen to the Dharma with the ears of our heart. Listen as if you're listening for the very first time. Listen as if the message is for you alone. And listen as if this is the last time you will ever do so in your life. This story is originally by Anthony DeMello, and I'm telling it to you now in my own words because to me it so perfectly illustrates the difficulty for us human beings to let go and receive, and the beauty of letting go and allowing. So it's about a mansion that was said to have been magnificent, if you could call it a mansion, because it was big and airy, no doors, just wide open spaces to enter. And it took up most of the tiny island upon which it stood. And this mansion was filled with hundreds and hundreds of bells, huge bells that were 2 stories high, and teeny tiny bells and all the sizes in between, created by the finest craftsmen. And when the wind blew, all the bells rang a sound that was melodious and sweet. And that sweet sound floated through the air and was heard near and far. But that was thousands of years ago. And as time went on, the island began to sink little by little until at last that splendid structure and all the bells had come to rest on the bottom of the sea. Well, legend has it that the bells continue to ring out. And if one stands on the shore and listens with all of one's heart, the tinkling of the bells will surely be heard. Now, a young man had grown up hearing of this legend of the mansion and the bells over and over, and so he decided to venture out to hear for himself. He traveled for many miles, and when he arrived, he took an inexpensive room in a nearby hotel. Each morning, he trekked over to the beach and he settled himself down, waiting to hear. But the waves roared and the wind blew through the trees, and the man could hear nothing else. He tried so hard to hear. He tried to ignore the sounds. He closed his eyes and he concentrated very hard on pushing away those noises, but to no avail. Finally, after days had grown into weeks, the young man just gave up. He just let go. He decided to return to his home. And so on the morning of his departure, he went back to the shore to say goodbye to the sand and the sea and the sky. He sat down and he wrapped his arm around his legs and he closed his eyes. And the waves rolled in one after the other, over and over. The wind whooshed through the trees. But he did not try that day. He did not resist the sounds that day. He just gave himself over to it. And soon he became so lost in the sounds that he was no longer conscious of them. It became a silence deep in his heart, and all was hushed. And that is when he heard it. The soft tinkling of the bells, so quiet it was almost a whisper, but it was sweet. When we quiet ourselves and we quit striving, when we let go of wanting, trying, needing, and simply entrust, simply give ourselves over, we too can hear the soft sweetness of the vow of the Amida Buddha. We too can be liberated, and we too can be at peace in this chaotic, windy, and wavy world. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.